Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we are going to be looking at the weekly meta breakdown for the standard best of 3 format. We're going to be doing things a little bit differently this week. We had some tournaments that took place this weekend, so we're going to start with that, and then we'll get to the untapped like MTG Arena rank ladder up to Mythic Rank. We'll look at those win rate stats. But there was a couple big tournaments this weekend, and I want to focus there, in part because I competed in one of them, so I can offer some firsthand informations, kind of feedback, stuff like that. So we had the Pizzabox Open, which is a community-run tournament series that happens every week, three out of the 4 weeks of the month, free to play with cash prizes. There was 119 players in this particular one. We also had the Chicago PT, so not the Pro Tour. The Pro Tour was Pioneer, but there was a $75,000 prize pool standard tournament that was won by an incredibly wild 68 card, 36 land deck. That's just like amazingly awesome. And then we'll look at the ladder data itself. So we're going to start with Pizzabox. I'll timestamp all these deck lists, everything like that, so you can get it from there. As always, like, comment, subscribe to the channel, helps it out, but we'll kind of take it from there. So Pizzabox Open happened yesterday. I participated in this. If we're going to look at the breakdown of the decks itself, we had a fairly large representation of Azorius Control, Midrange, Boros Convoke, and Mono Red. Surprise to no one, I was one of the participants with Mono Red, with a little bit different of a build. Honestly, like the win rates were pretty flat, all things considered, with Boros kind of getting hated out. My first 3 rounds were against temporary lockdown decks, and then 3 out of 5 were temporary lockdowns, Path to Peril style decks. So a lot of hating on Convoke, which was expected. I built my version of Mono Red to kind of have that notion of Azorius Control in place. The tournament itself was won. We can go to the finals. It was won by Esper Midrange 2-0 against a version of Mono Red aggro. So with this one was really interesting with connecting the dots, a little bit more low to the ground. We had the scapegoat in there. An interesting build of the deck itself, plays a little bit more into temporary lockdown, but has connecting the dots as kind of a card draw engine. So personally, I just missed the cut. I finished 31st out of 120 people, 4-3. I started 0-2. I punted game 2 with onboard lethal. I got too cute with it, pissed me off. But I won 4 straight, went to the last round, winning in for top 8, hopefully with tiebreakers, and then ended up losing a close game 3. The version of Mono Red that I played, and I have a full video of this on my channel, all 7 rounds with sideboarding, everything like that. The card that really stood out to me in Mono Red was Case of the Crimson Pulse. I wanted to have a lot of action against heavy removal decks, which we saw, a lot of blue-white control, and then just decks that are preying on these low to the ground. Mono Red catches a lot of incidental damage, so you're able to kind of deal with that. Case provides that card advantage. We also tried Fugitive Codebreaker in the place of the Adversary. This card was a little too clunky in my opinion. While it can provide you card advantage, 3 mana for a 2/2 that does nothing that turn is really kind of underwhelming. It also can't attack into Crawling Chorus or a Wedding Announcement token or any of those things. So I would go back to the Adversaries. That'd probably be my only change. The Full of Forge sideboard package was really sweet. I would probably go up to second Vampire Vengeance. If you are on the Adversary, that card was really good. Never ran into any graveyard decks, but had the graveyard hate in it. But like I said, I started off 0-2. All my losses were close to 3, which is kind of annoying. And then I pretty much 2-0'd almost every one of my wins. So the deck really was a kind of a coin flip in some instances of being able to kind of go all the way. But like I said, I've got a video on that. I'll paste all this. There's a ton of great deck list data here as well that you can take a look at. And if you want to get signed up, these are free tournaments. You can play in them on Arena. They're really well run. So $75,000 was won by Svak number 1. They lost the first round and then just won out pretty much every game from there. We're going to look on Arena. Now, this deck is definitely one of those decks where if you know what you're doing well, but it really much looks like folks don't know what they're doing, and it is showing up as 51% here. To win that much, this player is very good. I forget their like real life persona, but they're a grinder. They do really well, kind of in that, known for crazy deck ideas. So what are you trying to do here? Well, it's a slow Gurk deck. You're likely going to self-mill yourself. You're going to use Splendid Reclamation to bring back a bunch of these kind of Broker's Hideout style lands that fetch. With Nissa, Resurgent Animist, you can gain a bunch of lands that way as well, or like mana, so it kind of nets you that. The Aftermath Analyst can bring cards back from your graveyard, so you can get those lands back. Slow Gurk gets counters whenever a land is put into your graveyard from anywhere, and you can remove 3/1/1 counters from Slow Gurk to return a card from your graveyard, or return it to your hand, and then when it leaves the battlefield, you return 3 lands. So you can kind of loop the kind of, I think it's like 16 mana. Basically, the kind of combination is Slow Gurk with Takenuma. You return Takenuma to your hand. That allows you to keep milling. You get back Aftermath Artist or Analyst with the Nissa. Get back a bunch of these fetch lands. Even if they don't hit, it still generates mana. You keep looping it till you have enough mana. Then with the Takenuma, you keep milling back, getting the Jace, and then you mill your opponent out that way there. Terror Tides, Atraxa for fair kind of background. I would really have to play this deck, kind of see how it kind of plays out, which is kind of wild. Your sideboard's just like more removal, interaction, Jaces, Beseiju as kind of removal that are also lands as well. So definitely a wild one. Haven't tried it out. Seems like it's galaxy brain involved, but I wanted to share that one with you as well. So we'll go on to Untapped's ladder data. As always, if you want to get started with Untapped, link is in the video description. You can click and the link provided, let them know I sent you, and I'll timestamp, like I said, all these videos. So popularity of the day, Diamond and Mythic Rank. Boros Convoke, 14%, along with Azorius Control, kind of the 2 more popular. We have Esper Midrange, Dimir Midrange, kind of the core, same deck, kind of different elements along the edge. Mid 8%, Golgari Midrange, 7%. Mono red 6%, then we have the domains in there. The Golgari deck smashed me in the last game. Snuck away a game from them, but definitely a hard matchup for the mono red deck. Like the Esper decks, all those kind of decks were much more reasonable. Just the creature kind of scales and like removal and threats and vigilance, just kind of a pain. But if we're looking at the decks, Boros Convoke peaked at 21%, kind of on a downward, where we see a big stark increase in the Azorius Control, kind of coming up to match it. We see a slight increase again in the Dimir Midrange that's kind of mirrored by the Esper Midrange as well. It's kind of interesting there. We see like mono red earlier in the month kind of peaking and then kind of falling off and leveling out when Convoke came out. So we'll jump into it. We are, Diamond Mythic Rank, February 19th through today's the 26th, 31,000 matches, a best of 3 played. Bant Toxic highest win rate. So somehow, some way, dodging all those temporary lockdowns. So this version here, we have Aspirant's Ascent. Give a boost to your creature, give it flying and toxic 1, so your toxic can stack. You got all your cheap creatures, Crawling Chorus, Venerated Raw Priest, Skrell for protection. Your Jawbone Duelist in here as well. A couple of Annex Sentry in the main as removal. And then your interaction spells. March to protect your stuff, get rid of your opponent's blockers, give you a whole bunch of triggers with Venerated Rot Priest. Binding is a counter, Experiment Augury for card advantage, and Proliferate. Prolong is kind of bounce and, or this one's just like Anticipate. The Serum Snare is the bounce with Proliferate. You get utility lines in Seed Core and Myrex as well in the mana base. Sideboard, just Disruption, Spell Pierce, Spring the End. You got Canker Blooms, Destroy Evils for temporary lockdowns. Removal with Annex Sentry. Charge of Mites could either be creatures or removal. Bloated Contaminator is just a chunkier threat. And then Knockout Blow for like the mono red matchup. Mono red's pretty good into this. I just shift to control. And just like, even just with Spear sometimes being a 1-2 can kind of stack up pretty nice into it. Moving on, we go to Azorius Control, 71%. There's quite a few different variants of this Azorius Control deck, so it's kind of picking your flavor, how you want to attack. Kind of core of it is you have like No More Lies now, along with Deduced, giving you a lot of things to do in the 2 mana slot. Get Lost, March of Otherworldly Light as kind of the removal package. This one's on the Chrome Host Seed Shark's main. Typically you'll see these in the sideboard, and the win con is typically main board, just like Wandering Emperors, Restless Anchorage, Myrex, kind of in that lens, or just like your opponent losing all hope and just discouraged. Sunfall's another win condition. You'll always draw Farewell when it hits you the hardest, kind of mixed in. Denick as like life gain, and also shuts off some of the graveyard decks, like the crime decks, or the I forgot the name of it. The ones that are casting the Breach the Multiverse from the graveyard kind of effect. Destroy evil artifact, or sorry, enchantment or big creature things. Thrall for like the enter the battlefield style decks, good against Convoke. Negates for the counter matchups. Lockdowns for more removal. Tashana is good against like Domain, a lot of activated abilities. Jace for the mirror, or for kind of domain style strategies. And then Ezram as a nice beater into some of like the more aggressive decks, kind of differentiating your threat package. 4-color legends, so another Slogurk pile. This one's more kind of creature focused. I think there is another combo here with like looping lands with like Slogurk and a bunch of mana. Again, 2 Galaxy Brain for me. But at the core, you have like the engine of like Inti, you have Rona in here. Relic of Legends can generate you a bunch of mana with like tapping Rona, kind of going from there. Titania gains you life whenever land's put into the graveyard, so kind of cool value there. Also have the Meld package in here. Some removal in there. Glissa, Urtai, Shieldred, which is drawing a bunch of cards really good. And then Bobormius and Fibblethip. 5 mana, enters the battlefield or attacks, draw a card, then you may discard any number of lands. When you discard one or more of those cards this way, deals twice that much damage to target creature. So discarding lands plays really nice with Titania and Slogurk. Kind of get them back as well, so you always kind of have that value there. Bunch of Triomes in here. This deck feels like it's like $900 in paper just because of all the lands and all the rares and mythics kind of mixed in. Moving on to Boros Convoke, 70%. So again, a couple different variations of the ones. We see some with the War Leader's Call, some have gone on the War Leader's Call, and just going a little bit bigger with the Regal Bunnycorn, just offering a different angle attack. Core kind of engine of the deck. Play one of these 1-drops that make you an artifact. Play Gleeful Demolition, Convoke as early as turn 2. Sanguine Evangelist, Case of the Gateway Express, and Imidane's Recruiter can all buff your creatures themselves. The Warden of the Inner Sky can tap a whole bunch of stuff to get value, and Surveil or Scry, and then also get bigger over time. Mana base is really bad in this deck because you don't have a fast land, so you're playing some weird ones like Thran Portal, Secluded Courtyard kind of mixed into there. We have Break the Spell, Destroy an Enchantment, so just a way to get around temporary lockdown. And the Festivities for the Mirror for Toxic, some removal options. Thalia to tax the control decks, and Anointed Peacekeeper, similar effect to tax the control decks as well. Moving on, 4-color Domain. So it tracks a domain. Really what the deck's done is just kind of shifted its focus, continuing to still be predominantly green-white, but we see Respect for Aggro on the main board with temporary lockdown and depopulate. Case of the Locked House is a card being tried out. You can play additional lands. If you control 7 or more lands, you get to solve the case. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may play lands and cast creatures and enchantment spells. So just a nice card vantage engine. Very easy to hit that 7-line cap, and just lets you kind of, after the attracts turn, throw down a whole bunch of lines, kind of chain it together that way there. Sideboard, again, is just going to be a bunch of removal, interaction options, and Jace for the mirror or the control matchups. Cavern of Souls gives you Naming Angels, lets you get through counter spells on your big threats. Then go to Azorius Midrange. So this is kind of a tempo-oriented deck. You have Spyback Skyrim as an early threat. That can crew the Schooner. Denick's in here. No More Lies. Destroy Evil for a cheap interaction. Cryptic Coat for value and unblockable. Wedding Announcement for tokens. And then Anthem. Emperor, and then Virtue Loyalty. So kind of like a flash-oriented game that also can go wide with a bunch of tokens. Restless Anchorage, Myrex, so lots to do with your mana base. Sideboard's giving you a bunch of removal, counterspell options, graveyard hate, artifact enchantment hate, and then Sunfall. So you can kind of shift to control, shift to more aggro, kind of walk that line in terms of how you want to attack each of the matchups, which is what you really want to look at in a mid-range deck. It gives you the flexibility to approach each matchup on its own. It's kind of what I was doing with mono red as well, like shifting post-board against the creature mirrors, shifting to more control, using Forge as the win condition, and then just every other spell in your deck's just either card advantage with case or just killing things from killing your opponent's creatures. Dimir Midrange, similar kind of concept, a little bit more cheaper removal, a little bit lower curve, make disappears, ledger shredders, fairy masterminds, you got Bat in here. Bunch of flyers, plays really nice with Yogg, or Gix. You draw you cards, Preacher in here, a single copy of Invasion of Zendikar, or Amaket, lets you reanimate stuff. So a bunch of flash stuff, Shellies, Alcazats on the top end, Restless Reef, Myrex kind of package in there. Hand hate, between Liliana, Duress, removal, counters, Nightclubber to kind of get rid of token style strategies. Preacher in here, you got some like more grindy elements with Kaido and the Gix command as well. And then lastly, we got 4-color Squirming Emergence. So this is a self-mill deck. So you're using Otherworldly Gaze, Picklock Prankster's ability, Founding, Philagi, and then even like Tempest Heart to draw discard. Once you get the requisite for Squirming Emergence, you cast it to cheat into play like Atraxa, Jin-Gitaxias, Titan of Industry, one with the Multiverse, or Portal to New Phyrexia. This deck also takes advantage nicely of all the new Surveil lands that kind of have other ways to put things into the graveyard. Again, as we see in a lot of cases, counters, hand hate, removal, Lier for the grindy matchups, makes it so your spells can't be countered, also rebuys you spells from your graveyard, and then Virtues as more ways to have removal kind of scattered in there. That's it for the week. Let me know what you think, what you've been playing, what you've been enjoying. I would welcome feedback on the mono red tournament deck that I put up with the video, so if you have a chance, check it out. We have 7 rounds with all the sideboarding decisions, truncated 7 hours of gameplay into 2 hours or so. Each match is time-stamped. I walk through all my thought processes on it. Really curious what you think of tournament-based content on the channel here, beyond just the metagame. So let me know if you have a chance what the feedback is on that type of video. Thanks for watching. Have a great one. Stay safe out there.